Improving ELA performance through targeted academic interventions for special education students. A study on enhancing academic achievement in the K through 3 special education by Debra Hernandez. The identified problem was that low English language arts scores were ranging from 59 and below, with majority of our students who receive special education services. Pre-intervention ELA scores range from 16F to 93A. There were 32 participants, majority of them were boys, and they were African American. 31% of them were females. The goal was to increase student ELA scores to at least a 60, which is passing. Background investigation. Once I did my background investigation, I see that a lot of the students that received special education services had issues with phonics and comprehension. A lot of the intervention used was a one-size-fits-all. Action plan overview. The focus areas were phonics, vocabulary, and comprehension. This was done over a 4-week intervention trial with weekly sessions in the resource room. There were 32 kindergartners, first graders, second and third graders that were receiving special education services. Purposeful sampling based on reading difficulties. Sampling and instrumentation. I use standardized tools such as the Woodcock-Johnson Achievement Test. I also use the weekly progress reports that are sent home electronically to parents. There were teacher observations. The data points were pre and post intervention scores. Collaborative efforts. The stakeholders were the students, teachers, and parents. My role as the teacher was to implement interventions and adapt different teaching methods. The parents' role was when the students got home, they were reinforcing the strategies that they learned at school or that I would send an email that I taught that day, and they would practice them at home with their own children. And they would provide feedback to me if it worked or not. The procedures were baseline assessments, guided reading, progress monitoring, and group discussions. Internal and external validity. Internal validity was consistent intervention schedule and tailored instruction. The external validity were challenges in generalizing results due to sample size and demographic. Some of the possible influence of external factors like home environments. The school that I currently teach at and the students that receive special education services, 94% of our students are either in the poverty level or they are in low middle class. Most of them live in drug-infested neighborhoods. They do not have basic grocery stores around anymore. The life that they basically live was go home. Some of them come to school just to eat and survive. So a lot of outside factors played in as well with the performance of the students. Ethical considerations. The confidentiality. I had to make sure while I was doing this study that the students' information was locked up. Some of my students, by their simple identifiers, you could tell whose student and what student I was talking about. So I had to make sure that was secure at all times. My tailored support for diverse learning needs and IRB compliance was full informed consent from the parents. If the parents that want their student to participate no more in the study, they can just simply withdraw them at any time. Results. This is my favorite part because I did find out from this that my students were capable of making improvements. 27 of the 32 students did improve ELA scores. So this is talking about students who made a 60 or above. There were some students who made improvements, but they still were scoring below the level or below the passing level, which was 59 or below. 60 or above is the passing range. So example, NT score increased by 41 points. 4 students, unfortunately, that I had in my class actually showed a decline, meaning that I might need to make further adjustments for them. On the next 2 slides, you will see data visualizations that I use. So I use bar and line graphs comparing pre and post intervention scores. On this bar graph right here, this is the initial scores of students. So this bar graph is only representing the students who were scoring 59 and below. On this next section here, these are the final scores of students. So these were, unfortunately, my 4 students that were still falling below the level. So they did not make 60 or above. Connection to student achievement. The findings were improved comprehension and phonics skills for most participants. For my students that did not make a passing grade, it suggested that for me, I needed to make some adjustments to their instruction, and it did suggest that individualized strategies are critical for success. Basically, interventions are not a one-fit-all. Reflection and future research. I would like to extend my intervention duration. Instead of a 4-week trial, I would like to do the 9-week trial because we are on a 9-week grading period in Montgomery. So I would like to see the difference that make over time with students improve. I would like to also add additional supports for my students that did not achieve the 60 or above. For future research as well, I would like to explore technology's role in personalized reading support. Technology is very limited at our school. We're a Title I school, so some of the things that other schools may have in the district, we do not have them. We lack that. The conclusion. My summary was that small group interventions enhance ELA performance. When you take a student outside their general education classroom, out of a large amount of students, when you give them more tailored instruction or that more one-on-one support, more than likely, based off this study, they're likely to succeed or at least likely to make a progress in the classroom. Personalized adjustments and ongoing monitoring are vital. So Susie Taylor instruction that I give her might not be the same as Johnny's. So we had to make sure that when we're teaching our children and our students, we had to understand that they all learn on different levels. Some might be visual learners. Some might be audio learners. They have to hear me say it to them. I did have students that actually had to go to the board, take their hand, and touch the pictures. So that was their way of learning. In the closing note, this research offers actionable insight for educators aiming to improve special education outcomes. I am a big advocate for special education children, especially children that are at Title I schools. So children who look like me, sound like me, and act like me. Although resources are limited at these schools, the research did show, and in a study it showed, when these students were taking out the general ed classroom, and I pulled them into the resource room, and it was less students, or either it was a one-on-one experience, these children learned better. The distractions were not there in the classroom. They weren't afraid to ask questions. They raised their hand. But then I noticed when I did observations in the general ed classroom, they did not understand anything. Most of them don't want to raise their hands. They didn't want to get bullied. They didn't want to be embarrassed. So a lot of this comes from students simply just being embarrassed and worrying about what their peers think about them.